Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the best Pioneer cards in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So, a couple things before we hop into the video here. So, it's not like a top 10 or anything like that. I kind of just picked cards that I think are going to have some impact on the format as a whole. So, I believe there's 15 options, or at least 15 different cards that I picked for us to feature today. But let me know in the comment section below, is there any card that I missed? You know, am I overvaluing a card or underrating a card? Just let me know in the comment section below, as well as let me know your favorite card that's coming out in the set. I know this set is just sweet. There's a lot of cards that I'm going to be playing in this format, well, this new format with Lost Caverns of Ixalan, so just let me know in the comment section below. So, okay, so we're going to hop into here. So number 15, it's a reprint. It's a reprint, but it's still a fantastic reprint, sorry, it's Resplendent Angel. I've been talking about how this card for a very long time has needed a reprint. Obviously, the Angel deck that is in Pioneer plays 4 copies of this. It's definitely a very big kitchen table card. It sees a lot of playing Commander. I've been wanting this to get reprinted for so long, and we unexpectedly got it in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I did not think this card was going to get reprinted, but I'm extremely happy that it finally is getting its first reprint. Also has an alternate art as well, which is pretty sweet. So number 15, Resplendent Angel, fantastic reprint, helps bring the price a little bit down. When the set first comes out, I highly suggest picking these up though, because I could definitely see them creeping back up at least close to where they originally were at. So, all right, that's number 15. So, number 14, I have Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. I know a lot of people, I've seen 2 different opinions on it. I've seen, yeah, it's pretty medium. And I've seen other people say that this card is really, really good. And I'm kind of, most things kind of lie in a gray area, but I do think this card is very strong. I don't know how much play it's going to see in Pioneer. I think the only decks I would maybe want is like a mono blue flash or like a Simic flash deck of the past. I think they would want something like this. I think it has more potential than Fairy Mastermind, but I know, like, obviously, it depends on the matchup, but I think just, like, in a vacuum, I really like Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel a little bit more than Fairy Mastermind, but we'll kind of see what happens. It's a Siren Pirate, not the most relevant creature type, but we'll kind of see what happens. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this card in the very near future. So, all right, that's number 14. Number 13, I have Duskrosereler Reliquary. So, essentially a portable hole, but you have to sacrifice an artifact or creature, but it hits an artifact or creature of any CMC. Kind of a downside, like there's some situations where, you can't hit an enchantment with it, which can be kind of big, but it does have Ward 2 in addition to that as well. So, is it just strictly better than Portable Hole? No, because you do have to sacrifice an artifact or creature, obviously. So if you're playing like mono white humans, you don't really want to have to sacrifice one of your creatures, obviously, because you want to keep up the pressure. But I think this card is going to be good in a couple different decks. For instance, I've seen a lot of Rakdos sacrifice decks that typically splash white for like Showdown of the Scalds, and I could see them playing a couple of these. It seems fantastic. Sacrifice my treasure, sacrifice my Cauldron Familiar, whatever. I just think this card's going to be very good. What's also sweet is a friend of mine actually pointed this out, is it's when it enters, you do the exile, but it's an additional cost to cast it. You have to sacrifice an artifact or creature. So if you cheated it into play, you don't have to pay the alternate cost, which I think is, that's potentially something. So we'll kind of see what happens with this card, but I think it's a very strong card that in the right deck is going to just be extremely powerful. So, all right, number 13, it was Duskrosereler Reliquary. Number 12, I have Tshs Tidebinder. I think this card's going to be a little bit stronger in formats like Modern, but I think this card is still very strong. 3/2 for 2 and a blue, Flash, Merfolk Wizard. When it enters, counter to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tshs Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. So, it's just a powerful card. Obviously, any creature, planeswalker, artifact that has an ability, you can stifle it, and then it's permanently stifled as long as you control Tshs Tidebinder, which can that's good against a number of different decks, Obviously, if our opponent's playing like Karn the Great Creator, we shut down their Karn the Great Creator. Any problematic creature that has an activated or triggered ability is fantastic. What's also kind of funny, too, is, like Shieldred, for instance, if, we draw and then we just, we put this in play, then Shieldred is literally just a 4 or 5, which is kind of, that's one of the I guess, least powerful things you could do with this card, but I still think this card is just incredibly powerful. So Tshs Tidebinder is at number 12 for me. So, all right, number 11, I have Helping Hand. This card, I don't know what's going to happen with this card in the format. It's either going to be very powerful or no one's going to play it. 1 white sorcery, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, 2 things I thought of immediately when I saw this card. The first thing I thought of was that darn human cleric from like M19, where it's like a 1/1 for 1 with like death touch. And if it enters and you didn't cast it, you like exile it and you make a 5/5 demon. That's the first card I think of with this card. The second thing I think of is a fantastic sideboard card for decks like humans. You're like, oh, you killed my lieutenant or whatever. Okay, Helping Hand, I'll bring it back, trigger all my humans, that kind of thing. You can bring back your Adeline, whatever. I think this card is just fantastic. We'll kind of see what happens with this card, but I do think it's very powerful, and it could potentially lead to, I don't know if there would be a Reanimator deck that would really come from this kind of card, or if it would be like an Abzan value deck. Like maybe you would play it in like an Abzan rally deck or something, and you would just play it just to get a little bit more value. I'm not sure. We'll kind of see what happens with this card, but I do think it is very, very powerful. So, all right, number 10, we have Exal L Keeper and Pugnacious Hammerskull kind of together. This is more of just the dinosaur cards that were printed in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I decided to throw these 2 specific ones for a reason. So, obviously, for those who've been watching the channel for a long time, I play a ton of dinosaurs. I've had some competitive success with it, and I was talking for a long time how dinosaurs, to kind of take the next level in the metagame, it needed a good 1-drop and a good 3-drop. And man, the deck got it in Exal L Keeper and Pugnacious Hammerskull. These cards are just very powerful. Obviously, Exal L Keeper is a mana dork for dinosaurs, which kind of helps fix your mana, especially if you're playing like Gruul, or you're playing like Jund, for instance, or Naya. And then Pugnacious Hammerskull is a 6/6 for 3 with essentially no downside. As long as you're playing a bunch of other dinosaurs and you have a dinosaur in play, it's just a 6/6 for 3, which is just fantastic. So I'm very excited to play these cards. They're just very, very powerful, especially like, in Standard. I think they're going to have some play there. But anyways, we're talking about Pioneer, and these are my number 10 cards on the list. So, all right, now we're kind of in the top 10 territory here. So we're going to be hitting, the cards I think are the most powerful. So number 9, I can't even pronounce Zoyawa's Justice, sorry. I've never tried to pronounce that before. But so this is more of a speculation card. I don't know what's gonna, I don't know what this is gonna see play in, but I think this card's very powerful. The owner of target artifact or creature with mana value 1 or greater shuffles it into their library, then that player discovers X, where X is its mana value. So, like, on the surface, it kind of just looks like a Chaos Warp for the most part. But what I think's interesting is we're not going to be targeting our opponent's stuff with it. We're going to be targeting our own stuff. I don't know what spells that we could really, cheat in or attempt to, like any 0 mana stuff, because there's not really a lot of that in Pioneer. So I don't know what this card's going to do, but whether or not, in a year or 2 or 5, this card gets broken, I have a feeling that eventually this card is going to be seeing a lot of play. Again, I don't know a current shell. Let me know in the comment section below if you know of a really good combo with this card, but we'll kind of see what happens. But this card is fantastic, even if it's not right now. So, all right, number 8, I have Terror Tide, one of the new board wipes from this set. 2 black sorcery. All creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So, obviously, face value, it's a black 4-mana board wipe, which Pioneer is lacking in those. Most of actually all of the black board wipes that are 4 mana, either A, are like very situational, B, only get rid of like small creatures. So essentially, if you want to just like wrath an entire board in black, you have to pay 5 mana. But this has the potential to be a very, very powerful black board wipe, just because it's the number of permanent cards in our graveyard, which, guess what? Black is probably one of the best at putting its own permanents in the graveyard. Whether or not you're playing like Self-Mill from cards like Stitcher Supplier, or even if you're just like playing a Rakdos mid-range deck where you're, putting in just your Croxas in the yard, Oh, you sacrificed your Blood Tithe Harvester, that's in. Oh, you traded your Graveyard Trespasser or whatever, it went to the graveyard, that kind of thing. So I think TERTI has some potential. I think it's kind of similar to the Dusk Rose Reliquary, I think that's the name of that card, where it's like, it's not in a, it takes the right deck for it to be powerful, but in that specific deck, it's extremely powerful in one of the best cards in the deck. So we'll kind of see what happens with Tide, depending on how much the card is. If it's like $1, I highly suggest picking these up. I think this card is very, very strong. So, alrighty, number 7 on the list, I have Get Lost, essentially the new, Fateful Absence from the deck. 1 and a white instant, destroy a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens, which obviously means they can target creature explorers. I think this card's very, very strong. Again, very similar to Fateful Absence, but I think it's just a little bit stronger just because it also can hit an enchantment, which, not that there's a ton of problematic enchantments in the format. Yes, there is some, like obviously there's like Fires of Invention, and then there's Leyline Binding. You could also count like if you're trying to at least take out 1 enchantment from like the Bogles decks. I think this card's just a really, really strong sideboard card. Can you play in the main? Absolutely, but I think the sideboard is where this card is definitely going to shine. So, all right, number 6, I have Molten Collapse, which I think some people might think it's a little bit low. I think this card is going to be a little stronger in Modern just because of the fetch lands. But I think this is going to be very good in like Rakdos Sacrifice and probably Rakdos Midrange too. Essentially, it's Dreadbore, but better. So obviously, Rakdos, choose 1. If you descended this turn, you may choose both instead. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So, yeah, it's just better Dreadbore. So if you're already playing Dreadbore in any of your Pioneer lists, you might as well just play Molten Collapse. There's no reason not to. But being able to destroy a non-creature, non-land with mana value 1 or less is pretty solid. I mean, Rakdos can definitely struggle with some problematic permanents, and the fact that you're able to take one out is just fantastic. I mean, at the very least, our opponent has a blood token, and we can destroy the blood token, or, it's... Again, there's not going to be a lot of different things you'd be able to destroy, but, what if they have a portable hole? They have a portable hole, whatever, you can blow that up, that kind of thing. So, it's just better Dreadbore. I mean, that alone is already good because Dreadbore already sees a decent amount of play in the format, and I think Molten Collapse is obviously just a little bit better, but it's still going to see a ton of play in the metagame. So, all right, we're hitting top 5 territory here. So, number 5, I have Restless Vents. Spoiler alert also, for this top 5, if you play Rakdos or a lot of black decks, you are going to have a hoot with this entire set. So, Restless Vents obviously is a fantastic manland. 3 mana, we can make a 2/3 with Menace, which is an extremely good rate. And then when it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card, which also, spoiler alert, with Descend, it's if a permanent hits the graveyard from anywhere. It doesn't have to be from the battlefield. It can be milled, it can be discarded, and this helps turn that on. On top of that, obviously Rakdos Midrange is a fantastic deck in the metagame, and this is just another manland at their disposal. So I'm very happy that they completed this cycle for Pioneer, at least for the manlands, and this card is definitely, I would say, probably the strongest or the second strongest of the manlands, but I wanted to put this one just because Rakdos obviously is one of the premier decks in the format and is definitely going to take advantage of this card. So that's my number 5. Number 4, I have Bitter Triumph. 1 in a black instant as an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life and destroy target creature or planeswalker. And again, with the Descent, it's a card from a permanent from anywhere, so you can discard a permanent and do that. I also think this card's really underrated because of with obviously discarding a card. Again, if a Reanimator Shell pops up in this format, I think Bitter Triumph is going to see play. Yeah, destroy your creature or planeswalker, and I also get to discard a card to help, reanimate something. Even like if it's like black-white with, for instance, Helping Hand. We discard that 1/1 creature that I wish I remembered the name of. Oh, and then I'm going to Helping Hand it back and boom, make a 5/5 demon. I'm not sure. We'll kind of see what happens, but overall, Bitter Triumph is a fantastic removal spell. I think it's arguably the best of the 2 mana destroy creatures, like including like Infernal Grasp and everything, especially since it also hits planeswalkers. So we'll kind of see what happens with Bitter Triumph, but I think this card is extremely powerful. So number 3, I have Souls of the Lost, or as I call it, the Black Tarmogoyf. So obviously 1 in a black, As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or sacrifice a permanent, and then its power is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. So it's very, very similar to Tarmogoyf, arguably better in the right shell. You know, again, if you're doing a lot of self-milling, that kind of thing, this card can be very, very strong. So we'll kind of see what happens with Souls of the Lost. I don't think it's like an auto 4 of include in like every black mid-range deck, but I think this card is extremely powerful. We'll definitely see what happens with this card, but I'm very excited to see where it's going to go. I've kind of been advocating for Tarmogoyf to get a reprint in Pioneer for a long time, and this is probably the closest card we've had, especially close to Urborg Lurgoyf, but we'll see what happens. I'm very excited to see where this card is going to go in Pioneer. So, all right, we have 2 cards left. 2 cards. And for my number 2, I have Bartolome de Presidio. I believe that's how we pronounce it. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but I think this card is going to open up a very, very big deck archetype in this format. 2-1 for 2. Sacrifice another creature or artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Simply put, it's a free sacrifice outlet. We have a few free sack outlets in the format, but they're all 3 mana. This is our first 2 mana free sack outlet that we've had in Pioneer. Like, obviously there's cards like Woe Strider and Nantuko Husk, which are still very powerful, but this is our first 2 mana one, so we'll kind of see what happens with this card. I think that it could potentially help Rally become a little bit stronger, at least in the format. Like, obviously getting another free sack outlet is huge, and this card just gets really big because you get a +1/+1 counter on it. So the card is just fantastic. I really can't say enough good things about this card. Maybe they also play these in like Mardu Sacrifice. You know, it's something that could be splashed in there with the white, because you could also play you probably wouldn't play Helping Hand, but you could also play the Duskrose Reliquary. We'll kind of see what happens, but I'm very excited to see what is going to happen with this card. A deck that definitely needed a huge boost is getting a very, very powerful card. So we will see what happens with that whole entire archetype. So, all right, number 1. I think most people probably know what number 1 is going to be on the list. I had a separate video talking all about this card in the format a little while ago when we first saw some of the new Ixalan cards. It's Cavern of Souls. Cavern of Souls is a fantastic reprint that is finally coming to Pioneer. Cavern of Souls is going to help a number of different creature types that definitely need a little bit of a boost in the format. So a little bit of disclaimer, there's not a ton of counter spells for the most part in the format, but the main thing is this is a dual land for different creature types. So obviously, like humans, if you like playing 3, 4, 5 color human decks, that gets a boost. Even if you like playing mono white humans, it's still a boost with that deck as well. But then there's also decks like Slivers, obviously the dinosaurs, the pirates, really any creature type matters deck. It gets a huge boost. I would say the only real loser, quite frankly, is Spirits, because they play a lot of counter spells, but guess what? Spirits can play it as well. Obviously, it helps fix your mana a little bit, which is fantastic. So, Cavern of Souls is definitely, in my opinion, the best card that is coming to Pioneer from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. This set was super fun to go over. There's a ton of spicy cards, and I'm very happy that there was a big list. Sometimes when I make, these lists for new sets, I kind of struggle to find like 10 cards, but this one was, man, I've got a ton of cards that I want to talk about. So I'm very happy that the set was so sweet. So that is the end of the video. Let me know in the comment section below, what card are you looking forward to most from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, as well as let me know, did I definitely undervalue or overvalue a card? Just let me know in the comment section below. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.